Hey everybody, I wanted to read you an article today. It's an older article. It came out, published on December 15th, 2008. But it's still very relevant to today's society. Published in Psychology Today, and I'll include the link below if you'd like to read it yourself. The 7 hardest addictions to quit. So the way it's written, it's backwards. So it starts from 7, and then number 1 is the very hardest addiction to quit. Number 7 is cocaine. Cocaine is an episodic use drug. It's one moreover associated with certain lifestyles at one time. If not now, people in the financial industry and entertainment fields more often than the younger people. Studying long-term uses of cocaine, Ronald Siegel, let me mention the author's name, Stanton Peele, PhD, right? Sorry, had to get that out there. That's the author of this article. Studying long-term users of cocaine, Ronald Siegel found most moderated, controlled, or quit their use over time. So cocaine, it says, that people, as they grew older, often quit, right? After cocaine use peaked in the 1980s, middle-class users quit. Although use in inner cities continued sometime longer. Okay, then remarking on this phenomenon, David Musto concluded, the question we must ask ourselves is not why people take drugs, but why do people stop? He surmised that people with fewer resources had less to counterbalance their addictions. That's a really good point, I think. Whatever you're addicted to, if you're using it addictively, probably because your financial position right now might not lead to something to counterbalance that addiction. So, well, anyway, okay, on to number 6 is alcohol. Alcohol is the addiction most written about, both in scientific literature and as recounted in personal memoirs. Alcoholics Anonymous members swear that AA is the only way to recover. Treatment experts claim that alcoholism is inescapable without treatment. So it goes on and talks a little bit more about that. There's a lot of people in America, I can say, that are addicted to alcohol. Among the large majority who went untreated, fewer than a quarter drank alcoholically at the time of the interview, but more than 2/3 of this group continued drinking non-alcoholically. So socially, drinking is even hard to quit addiction. Okay, so number 5 is Valium. Now, in general, drugs used for pacifying purposes, which are usually depressants, taken regularly over long periods of time, are hard to quit. So it's talking more, about Valium and other drugs. I wondered if it notes these. Let's see. Americans love these drugs. They need them to survive, although in part they have been supplanted by antidepressants. So yeah, Valium is number 5 in the hard habit to quit, hard addiction to quit. Number 4 is heroin. Powerful analgesics taken regularly are difficult for many, but not most, people to quit. After all, most of us have had intravenous supplies of narcotics in the hospital, followed by prescriptions for powerful analgesics when we went home, right? What's remarkable, it's not so much that heroin can produce serious withdrawal for some, but how variable this syndrome is and how comparable it is to depressant or painkiller drugs and analgesics like Vicodin and OxyContin, which is the fastest growing drugs of abuse today and are taken by the majority of illicit narcotics users and overdose victims. So it's worth noting that when people quit the drug with little difficulty, as the Major League ballplayer Ron LaFleur did when he entered prison and took up baseball, it is simply considered impermissible to describe or portray this aspect in their stories. So even if they do quit successfully these hard drugs, they don't get it. It's not publicly announced, right? So heroin's number 4, and we're on to number 3, which is cigarettes. In ratings by cocaine and alcohol addicts, smoking is regularly cited as the more difficult drug to quit. And I can vouch for that one myself, even asking, let's see, generally on par with more difficult than heroin. Nonetheless, more than 40 million living Americans have quit smoking. While impressive, this still only represents about half of those who have ever been addicted to cigarettes, although a higher percentage of those in higher subeconomic groups have quit. When I speak to recovering people at addiction conferences, I ask, what is the toughest drug to quit? By acclamation, the audience shouts out, cigarettes or smoking. I ask them, how many people in this room have been addicted to cigarettes, but that are now off of them? Half to 2/3, often hundreds of people in the room raise their hands. Wow, I enthuse. And how many have used any kind of therapy, medical, or support to quit? And never more than a small handful have done so. All right, you ready for number 2? It's potato chips. The number 2 hardest addiction to quit. Well, he says here, I use potato chips, of course, to stand for all kinds of comfy foods, alluring but fattening foods, these comfort foods which deprive more Americans of years of life than any other substance, are inextricably wait, let me try that again. Inextricably integrated with our own lives and with the lives of all Americans. Although overweight is disapproved and regularly lectured against, it still have the stigma of drugs. It still does not have the stigma of drugs, alcohol, and cigarettes. So that hidden but not so hidden food addictions are more readily tolerated. That gastric bypass surgery is growing so rapidly shows us that the substance addiction people find hardest to quit, even those for whom it causes serious, life-threatening health conditions. In fact, we will never resolve our massive food addictions in the United States, but we hope to come up with medical cures to prevent their negative effects. As if we could succeed by simply deciding to let smokers continue to smoke non-cancerous cigarettes. Okay, ready for number one. What do you think it is? The hardest number one thing to quit addiction. It's love. Love is the hardest addiction to quit. Certainly causes more murders and suicides than any other addiction. And if you think people miss smoking, consider what people are like when they break up with a longtime lover or get divorced, even when they hate their spouses. On the other hand, we read frequently about people who totally sacrifice their lives to a lover who betrayed them or otherwise destroyed their psyches, yet who still don't quit the relationship. What is the answer after all? When an abusive victim is asked why they simply don't leave the abusive spouse, because I love him and I can't live without him. I regularly counsel spouses of substance abuse about this. Don't despair, however, no matter what your addiction is, the large majority of addicts give up every kind of addiction. So you can. That most people do it. One way or another tells you it lies within your power. Anyway, I'll link this article below. Thanks for listening. What's your addiction? No, you don't have to put it in the comment below. Just ask yourself, huh? Anyway, love you guys.